Fame is supposed to be protection. When millions of people hear your songs or watch your videos, you should be too visible to touch, too valuable to harm. But for the people in these cases, fame did the opposite. It made them easier to find. These were not cartel members. They were singers, influencers, and young musicians chasing a break. Some were handed death notes on stage. Some were killed on camera in front of their own fans. And in almost every case, the men who pulled the trigger walked away. Today, we are covering 10 entertainers and famous people who were executed by cartels. What you are about to hear will change the way you look at celebrity, music, and the real cost of crossing the wrong line in Mexico. Section 1. Chalino Sanchez. On the night of May 16, 1992, a man named Rosalino Sanchez Felix walked onto a stage in Culiacan, Sinaloa. Everyone called him Chalino. He was 31 years old. He was married, with 2 young children back home in California. His wife, Maricela, was raising them in Paramount while he was away on tour. The venue that night was called Salón Bugambilias. It was packed. The fans in the crowd knew every word to his songs, and Chalino was at the peak of his fame. By the time the sun came up the next morning, his body was found in an irrigation ditch outside the city. He had been blindfolded. His wrists showed signs of being bound. He had been fatally shot twice in the back of the head. Chalino was born on August 30th, 1960, on a tiny ranch in the Sinaloan countryside. He was the youngest of 8 children. His father, Santos, died when Chalino was only 6 years old. His mother, Señorina, raised the family in a part of Mexico where poppy fields grew in the hills, and where the men who would later run the Sinaloa cartel were already building their roots. Violence was not rare where he grew up. It was common. When Chalino was 15, a man assaulted his older sister.
Chalino walked into a party, spotted the man across the room, pulled out a gun, and shot him dead. He said nothing before pulling the trigger. After that, he fled Mexico. He crossed the border into the United States, worked on farms, smuggled other migrants across the border for money, and eventually ended up living with an aunt in Inglewood, California. In Los Angeles, Chalino washed dishes and sold cars, and sold small amounts of marijuana and cocaine to get by. He got arrested for petty crimes and served a few months in La Mesa prison. That prison time is what made him a musician. Most of the other inmates were drug traffickers. Many of them could not read or write. They had stories they wanted saved. Stories about shootouts, about women, about crimes they had committed or that had been done to them. Chalino started writing those stories into songs called corridos. The inmates paid him in cash, in watches, and in guns. When he got out, he kept writing them. He started recording in 1987 and selling cassettes out of his car trunk at flea markets. By 1989, he had quit every other job and was making music full-time. What made Chalino different was that he was not pretending. He was not trained. He knew he was often out of tune. He called his own singing style barking. But the people in his songs were real, and the audiences in Los Angeles and Sinaloa knew it. He was the first singer of his kind to sing in the rough Sinaloan accent instead of softening it for radio. His fans did not see him as an entertainer. They saw him as one of their own. And the cartel members who lived the lives he was singing about started hiring him to sing at their private parties. The first real warning came on January 25, 1992. Chalino was performing at a nightclub in Coachella, California. A drunk man named Eduardo Gallegos jumped on stage and fired 4 shots at him. Chalino was hit twice in the chest. He still pulled out his own gun and fired back, but his gun jammed and his bullets missed Gallegos, killing a 20-year-old bystander named Claudio Rene Carranza instead. Chalino survived, but after that night, he was scared. He gave his gun collection away to his friends. He sold the rights to all his songs for a cheap price just to buy his wife a house.
His own record team told him not to go to Sinaloa. He went anyway. On the evening of May 15, 1992, Chalino performed at Salón Bugambilias in Culiacán. During the show, a man in the crowd walked up to the stage and handed him a folded piece of paper. The moment was caught on video, and that video still exists. Chalino opens the note. He reads it. His face changes. He wipes sweat from his forehead. He looks out into the crowd like he is trying to find someone. Then he crumples the paper, puts it away, and keeps singing. Nobody ever found out exactly what the note said. Most people who knew him believed it was a death threat. After midnight, Chalino left the venue in a 1992 Ford with two of his brothers, a cousin, and several young women. A group of men in black Chevrolet Suburbans pulled the car over on the road. The men showed state police identification. They told Chalino their commander wanted to speak with him. Chalino got out of his own car and got into one of theirs. His brothers and the others were left behind. That was the last time anyone in his family ever saw him alive. The next morning, two farmers walking near an irrigation canal close to Mexican Federal Highway 15 found his body. His hands were tied. A cloth was over his eyes. He had been shot twice in the back of the head at close range. He was 31. The murder was never solved. No arrests were ever made. The investigation by Sinaloan authorities went nowhere, and most people who have looked into the case believe the police either knew who did it and did nothing, or were involved themselves. Most investigators think it was cartel revenge, either for songs Chalino had written or for old fights from his past. After he died, his fame exploded. His widow counted 150 different corridos written in his honor. Rappers like Snoop Dogg have mentioned him. A biopic of his life is being made. But none of that changed the fact that his wife became a widow at 27, and his children, Adan and Cynthia, grew up without a father. 12 years later, his son Adan died too, in a car crash at 19, while riding in his dad's old Ford. Chalino was the first famous entertainer of this kind to be executed after receiving a public warning. But he was not the last. 14 years later, another singer would sit in a crowd in another Mexican border city and make the same choice Chalino made. He would perform a song he had been warned not to perform, and the men he insulted would make sure his death was even more public than Chalino's. Section 2. Valentine Elizalde. On the night of November 25, 2006, a singer named Valentine Elizalde walked off the stage at a fair in Reynosa, Tamaulipas. He was 27 years old. He had just finished his last song. Hundreds of fans were crowded around the exit, holding up papers and pens and t-shirts, hoping to get an autograph. Valentine climbed into the back seat of his black Chevrolet Suburban. His manager got in, his driver got in, his cousin Fausto got in. They started to drive away. Before the SUV could even leave the grounds, two other vehicles pulled up alongside it and opened fire with automatic weapons. More than 70 bullets tore through the car. Valentine was hit 20 times. His manager and his driver were killed instantly. His cousin Fausto somehow survived the gunfire and crawled out of the wreckage wounded. The whole thing happened in front of hundreds of witnesses. Some of them filmed it on their phones. The videos ended up on YouTube within hours. Valentine was born on February 1, 1979, in a small village called Hitonhueca, near the town of Echojoa in Sonora. His father was also a singer, a man named Everardo Elizalde, who went by the stage name El Gallo, which means the rooster. When Valentine became a singer himself, he took this same name with a small change. He called himself El Gallo de Oro, the golden rooster. His father died in a car accident on a stretch of road in Sonora that was so dangerous, the locals called it the curve of death. Valentine carried that loss with him the rest of his life. He started performing professionally in June of 1998 at a local festival in Sonora. He was 19. He released his first album the following year. His voice was rough and often off-key, but audiences loved him anyway because he sang with feeling. Over the next several years, he released album after album. He sang romantic love songs. He sang party songs. He sang covers of famous Mexican classics.
But some of his songs were narco-corridos, songs that praised specific drug lords by name. He wrote lyrics honoring Vicente Carrillo Fuentes, a boss of the Juarez cartel. He wrote songs honoring Joaquin Guzman, the man known as El Chapo, who led the Sinaloa cartel. Singing about those men put Valentine on a side of a war he may not have fully understood. In the summer of 2006, a few months before his death, a video appeared on YouTube. It was a slideshow of graphic photos showing the dead bodies of men linked to the Gulf Cartel and its armed wing, a group called Los Zetas. The soundtrack on the video was a Valentine Elizalde song called A Mis Enemigos, which means To My Enemies. The username of the person who posted the video was Mata Zeta, which translates to Zeta Killer. The message was clear. Someone on the Sinaloa cartel side was using Valentine's song to taunt the men who controlled Reynosa and the rest of the state of Tamaulipas. Valentine had nothing to do with posting the video, but his song was now the theme music for an insult against some of the most violent men in Mexico. Valentine's own team understood the danger. His music representative begged him not to perform in Reynosa. Reynosa was deep inside Gulf Cartel territory. Playing there at all was risky. Playing the song that had been used to mock them was something else. But Valentine went anyway, and when he got on stage that night, he not only performed A Mis Enemigos, he performed it twice. He ended his show with it. Men connected to the cartel were in the audience. One of them, a former high-ranking member of Los Zetas named Jaime Gonzalez Duran, who went by the nickname El Hummer, was reported to have ordered the hit from inside the crowd. After the shooting, the case went cold for more than a year. But in March of 2008, Mexican authorities arrested a man named Raúl Hernández Barón in the state of Veracruz. Hernández Barón went by the alias Flanders One. He was one of the original founding members of Los Zetas. Before he became a hitman, he had served in the Mexican army as an infantry soldier for 6 years. When he left the army, he joined the Gulf Cartel, and he became part of the first group of ex-soldiers who turned into the most feared armed wing in all of Mexican organized crime. At the scene of his arrest, authorities seized an AR-15 rifle, a 9mm pistol, a bulletproof vest, and ammunition. He was listed by the Mexican Attorney General's office as the main suspect in Valentine's murder. Hernández Barón was never actually convicted for killing Valentine. He faced other charges, including drug trafficking and organized crime involvement. He was later extradited to the United States. El Hummer, the man believed to have given the order, was eventually arrested too and sentenced to 35 years in an American federal prison on drug charges. But he was also never officially charged with ordering Valentine's death. The murder technically remains open to this day. After he died, Valentine became more famous than he ever was in life. His albums hit the top of the sales charts in 2007, the year after his murder. He was nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Banda Album. 4 of his posthumous albums were released. Radio stations that had barely played him before now played him constantly. But his family kept paying the price. His cousin Fausto, the only survivor of the attack that night, lived with the memory of what happened in that SUV for the rest of his life. And in June of 2016, almost 10 years later, Valentine's former girlfriend, Blanca Vianney Duran Brambilla, was shot twice in the head in Sonora by a gunman who approached her and then ran. Their young daughter was with her at the time,
but was not hurt. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Valentine died because he sang the wrong song in the wrong room. But the next singer on our list was killed for something even harder to understand. He did not sing about cartels at all. He sang romantic love ballads about broken hearts, and it still did not save him. Section 3. Sergio Gomez. On the night of December 1st, 2007, a singer named Sergio Gomez walked off stage at the Estadio Morelos, a stadium in Morelia, Michoacán. He had just finished the biggest concert of his life. The venue was packed. Fans had sung along to every word. He had hits on the radio. He had a new album. He was 34 years old, and he was on top of his career. He was supposed to get in a car, drive a few hours, and catch a flight to his next concert in Puerto Vallarta. He was supposed to hold a press conference there the next morning. He never made it. By the time the sun rose on December 2nd, Sergio was dead on the side of a road outside Morelia. His body had been beaten. He had been strangled. His face had been burned with a cigarette lighter. Sergio was born on June 2nd, 1973, in a city called Ciudad Hidalgo in the Mexican state of Michoacán. His full name was Paulo Sergio Gomez Sanchez. He grew up in Mexico, but moved to the United States as a young man. He ended up working in Chicago, which had a large community of Mexican immigrants. It was there, in 2003, that he started a band with some other young Mexican men who were also working in Chicago. They called the band Cartels de la Sierra. They played a style of music called Duranguense, a fast, upbeat version of regional Mexican music that mixed traditional sounds with heavy drum beats. The band took off almost immediately. Their songs were not narco-corridos. Sergio did not sing about drug lords or cartels or violence. Cartels de la Sierra was known for romantic love songs. Their hits were about heartbreak, longing, and loyalty. Songs like Volveré, which means I will return, became huge radio hits in both Mexico and the United States. Another single called Mi Credo reached the top 10 on the Billboard Hot Latin Songs chart in 2005. Sergio was living the American dream in a small house in Avon, Indiana, a quiet suburb outside Indianapolis. He had a family. He flew back and forth between Indiana and Mexico for concerts. He was not the kind of artist anyone thought of as being in danger. On December 1st, 2007, Cartels de la Sierra headlined a concert at the Estadio Morelos. The show went well. After the concert, Sergio got into a car with two of his team members. One of them was Javier Rivera, his representative based in the United States. The other was Victor Hugo Sanchez, his Mexican promoter. They were driving out of the stadium area when something stopped them. According to later reports, their vehicle was surrounded by at least 10 other vehicles, most of them vans, filled with armed men. The men took all three of them. They were kidnapped together. About 2 hours later, the two business partners were released alive. Sergio was not. Nobody from his family received a ransom demand. No phone call ever came asking for money. Whatever was going to happen to him had already been decided before he was taken. His body was discovered the next morning by the side of a road on the outskirts of Morelia. When investigators examined him, they found injuries that told a story no one wanted to hear. He had been beaten severely across his chest and stomach. Dark bruises covered his body. His face had been burned over and over with what forensic experts believed was a cigarette lighter. He had been strangled to death. Because his face was so damaged, he had to be identified by a tattoo of a panther on his left arm. Investigators looked at several possible motives. The most reported theory was that Sergio had been seen with a woman who was connected to a man in a drug cartel, and that he had been warned not to perform in Morelia because a powerful criminal group did not want him there. He performed anyway. Another theory was that the killing was a territory message. a way for one cartel to send a warning to a rival cartel or to the community by taking out a popular public figure. The state of Michoacán was one of the most violent in Mexico at the time. Cartels like La Familia Michoacana had deep control of the region. But no clear suspect was ever named. No arrests were ever made. The case, like so many others, went cold. What made Sergio's death so shocking was that he did not fit the pattern. He was not a narco corrido singer. He did not sing about drug lords. He did not brag about connections to cartels.
He was a man who sang about love. His wife became a widow. His band members, who had been with him since the beginning in Chicago, were left without a leader. His body was sent back to the United States and buried near his home in Indiana. His family never got answers, and the people who ordered his torture never faced a court. Just 4 days after Sergio's murder, on December 6, 2007, the Grammy Awards nominated him posthumously for Best Banda Album. The same ceremony also nominated Valentine Elizalde posthumously, the singer who had been gunned down in Reynosa almost exactly 1 year earlier. 2 Grammy nominees for the same category, both dead, both killed in Mexico, both killed within 12 months of each other. It was a grim record for the regional Mexican music industry, and it was a warning that the violence had reached a level where even romantic love songs were no longer safe. But Sergio's murder was not the only one that week. While his body was still lying on the side of the road outside Morelia, another singer was fighting for her life in a hospital bed in a different part of Mexico. She had been shot the night before, and she had survived. The doctors told her family the wounds were not fatal. She was going to recover. She was wrong. Section 4. Zayda Pena Arjona. Zayda Pena Arjona was asleep in a hospital bed in Matamoros, Tamaulipas, when 3 men walked into the building looking for her. It was December 1st, 2007. She was 26 years old. The night before, she had been shot in the back at a motel. The bullet had gone in deep enough to hurt her, but the doctors who operated on her had told the family the good news. She was going to live. Her injuries were not fatal. Her mother, Blanca, was told her daughter was stable. Zayda had made it through surgery. She just needed to rest. But while she was recovering, the men who had tried to kill her the night before found out she was still alive, and they were not willing to leave the job half finished. Zayda was born on March 5, 1981. She grew up in northern Mexico. She had a beautiful voice and started singing publicly as a teenager. In 1996, when she was just 15 years old, she recorded her first album. By the late 1990s, she was the lead singer of a band called Zayda y los Culpables, which means Zayda and the Guilty Ones. The band played a style of music called grupera, which is a mix of Mexican norteño music, cumbia rhythms, and romantic ballads. Their songs were about love, heartbreak, and relationships. Their biggest hits, including Como Mariposa and a song called Tiro de Gracia, were not about crime or violence. Tiro de Gracia is a Spanish phrase that literally means coup de grace, the final shot given to someone to end their suffering. But in the song, Zayda used the phrase to describe the pain of a failed romance. It was a metaphor. The song had nothing to do with cartels. The band also recorded a song called De Contrabando. Years later, the Mexican-American singer Jenny Rivera would record her own version of that same song, and it would become one of her biggest hits. But before any of that happened, Zayda was the one who sang it first. She was talented, beautiful, and popular. She had a mother who worked in a public prosecutor's office, which meant she had some protection, or at least some connection to the legal system. None of that helped her. On the night of November 30th, 2007, Zayda was staying at a place called the Monaco Motel in Matamoros. Matamoros sits right on the border of the United States, across from Brownsville, Texas. It is deep inside Gulf Cartel territory and was one of the most violent cities in Mexico at the time.
She was with two other people. One was a friend of hers, a woman named Ana Bertha Gonzalez. The other was a man named Chalino Sanchez, who worked at the motel. Shortly before midnight, a gunman walked in and opened fire. Ana Bertha was killed on the spot. Leonardo was killed on the spot. Zayda was hit in the back. The bullet went in near her spine. She was rushed to a nearby hospital called Alfredo Pumarejo Hospital, just a few blocks from the motel. The surgeons went to work right away. They opened her up, located the bullet, and removed it. After the surgery, they gave the family the best news possible. Zayda was going to survive. Her injuries were serious, but not life-threatening. The family exhaled. Whoever had tried to kill her had failed. The next day, on December 1st, 2007, several men entered the hospital. They walked through the corridors like they belonged there. No security stopped them. They went from room to room, checking who was inside, until they found hers. They walked in with guns. Zayda was in her hospital bed, still recovering from surgery. They shot her again, at point-blank range. Different news outlets reported the details slightly differently. The Dallas Morning News reported that the final fatal bullet hit her in the back. Reuters and The Independent reported that the final bullet hit her in the face. Either way, the result was the same. She was dead before anyone in the hospital could stop it. She was 26 years old. What made her murder so chilling was that nobody could explain it. Zayda had no known connections to drug traffickers. She had no criminal record. Her band did not sing narco corridos. She did not write songs about cartel leaders. She did not glorify drug lords. She was a woman who sang romantic music about heartbreak. Mexican authorities investigated the case. Some reports suggested she may have been killed because of a personal relationship, possibly tied to someone involved in organized crime. Other reports suggested her family's connection to the prosecutor's office may have played a role. But no clear motive was ever made public, and no arrests were ever made for the murder. Her killing sent a wave of terror through the Mexican music industry. Musicians who had always assumed romantic songs were safe were forced to rethink everything. Zayda's death came just days before Sergio Gomez's murder in Michoacán. Two famous singers, both playing love songs, both murdered within the same week. Pablo Zuac, an industry expert with the Mexican music cable channel, described the feeling in the industry at the time as very tense and very heavy. People were afraid to cross the street. People were afraid to go to concerts. The violence had moved from the targets everyone expected into the lives of artists nobody would have thought of as a threat. Zayda was buried near her hometown. The song she is most remembered for, Tiro de Gracia, kept playing on Mexican radio for years after her death. Many fans noticed that its title now had a second, darker meaning. The coup de grace she had sung about as a heartbreak metaphor had been delivered to her in real life by armed men standing over her hospital bed. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But even Zayda's killing could not prepare people for what happened 3 years later, when another singer would be hunted down on a Mexican highway in broad daylight. He would be chased, ambushed, and executed in his own car, just hours after laughing off rumors of his own death on the radio. Section 5. Sergio Vega. On the morning of June 26, 2010, a singer named Sergio Vega sat down for a short interview with a Mexican entertainment website called La Oreja. The reason for the interview was strange. For days, rumors had been spreading online that Sergio was dead. Social media posts, message boards, and radio callers were all saying he had been murdered. It was not the first time this had happened. Fake death rumors had followed him around for years. He told the reporter from La Oreja that he was used to it. He said it happened so often that every time a rumor went around, he had to call his elderly mother, who had a heart condition, just to reassure her he was alive. He laughed about it. He said he was fine. A few hours after that interview, he was dead. He was 40 years old. Sergio was born on September 12, 1969, in a tiny rural community called Ejido Hornos in the state of Sonora, near the city of Ciudad Obregón. He was the eighth of 13 children. His family was large and poor. In 1988, he moved to the United States and settled in Phoenix, Arizona. The next year, he joined a band his brothers had started called Los Hermanos Vega, which means the Vega Brothers. He sang and played a traditional instrument called the bajo sexto. The band signed with a label called Joey Records and had a few regional hits. In 1994, after 5 years with his brothers, Sergio had a falling out with them and left the group. He formed a new band called Los Rayos del Norte. A few years later, he renamed the group Sergio Vega y sus Chacas del Norte, and he started going by the stage name El Chaca. That name became his identity for the rest of his career. He kept releasing albums through the 2000s. He sang narcocorridos, songs that told the stories of drug traffickers and the men who ran the cartels. He also sang romantic ballads and norteño music. He became popular enough to be called one of the kings of banda and norteño music. His most recent album at the time of his death was called El Jefe de Plazas, which means the boss of territories, a phrase that usually referred to cartel bosses who controlled specific areas. Sergio had been receiving death threats for years. After the murder of Sergio Gomez from Que Paz de la Sierra in 2007, Sergio Vega had noticed the pattern. Famous singers were being targeted. He hired more security. He was more careful about where he traveled. But he kept performing, and he kept traveling to dangerous parts of Mexico. Because that was where his fans were, and that was how he made his living. On that Saturday, June 26, 2010, Sergio was scheduled to perform at a village festival in the state of Sinaloa. He got into his bright red Cadillac. A passenger named Montiel Sergio Avila got in with him. They started the drive toward Los Mochis in Sinaloa. Somewhere along the road, near a place called Barobampo, another vehicle pulled up alongside them. The gunmen inside opened fire. They shot at the Cadillac as it was moving. Bullets tore through the metal and glass. Sergio was hit in the chest. He lost control of the car. The Cadillac went off the road and crashed. Then the gunmen did something that made it clear this was not a robbery or a random attack. They got out of their own vehicle. They walked over to the crashed Cadillac. They found Sergio still alive inside. And they shot him again, at close range, in the head and in the chest, to make sure he was dead. His passenger, Avila, was badly wounded but somehow survived. The total number of shots fired at Sergio and his passenger during the chase and the execution was around 30. When police arrived, Sergio was slumped over in his red Cadillac, surrounded by shell casings and broken glass. What made his death especially haunting was the timing. The fake death rumor that had been circulating for days had actually been true, just earlier than expected. Someone had clearly known a hit was coming. Whether the rumors came from the killers themselves or from people close to the cartel who had heard the order had been given was never made clear. But the pattern was clear enough. Sergio spent the last few hours of his life laughing off his own death on the radio, only to die the same afternoon in exactly the way the rumors had said. No motive was ever officially confirmed. The state of Sinaloa was the home base of several of the most powerful drug cartels in Mexico, including the Sinaloa cartel of Joaquin Guzman and the Beltran Leyva organization. Sergio had sung songs that could have been interpreted as siding with one cartel over another. He had performed for private parties where cartel figures were known to be in attendance. Any number of rivalries, insults, or perceived loyalties could have been the reason. No arrests were ever made. Nobody was ever charged. His murder joined the growing list of famous Mexican musicians killed in the span of just a few years, with no justice for any of them. Sergio's family buried him with honors in his home state. His music continued to be released after his death, with several posthumous albums coming out in the years that followed.
His fans remembered him not just for his voice, but for the way he died. The bright red Cadillac he was driving, riddled with bullet holes, became one of the most widely circulated images in Mexican music history. It showed, more clearly than any news story could, exactly what the cost was for a famous singer who lived too close to the world he sang about. But Sergio was not the last entertainer killed on a Mexican highway that year. 4 months after his death, another narco corrido singer, who had also recently appeared in a film, would be found dead on a mountain road in Chihuahua. The scene around his body would contain over 80 shell casings. Section 6. Fabian Ortega Pinon. On the night of October 19, 2010, a singer named Fabian Ortega Pinon got into a vehicle on a lonely mountain highway in the state of Chihuahua. He was 28 years old. He was traveling with 2 other men. One of them was a 25-year-old relative of his, Jesus Eduardo Ortega Delgado. The other was a man named Manuel Sáenz Medina. They were driving through the Sierra, the rural mountain region of northwestern Mexico, heading from the town of La Junta toward the small settlement of Tomochi. Somewhere along that road, their vehicle was ambushed. By the time authorities arrived, all 3 men were dead. Around their bodies, investigators counted more than 80 empty bullet casings from different calibers of weapons. That is the number of shots it took to kill them. Fabian was born on April 18, 1982, in the small municipality of Gómez Farías, in the rural hills of Chihuahua. This part of Mexico is famous for 2 things: its mountains and the drug trafficking routes that run through them. As a teenager, Fabian moved to the United States, where he eventually built most of his music career. He performed under the stage name El Halcón de la Sierra, which means the Falcon of the Sierra. The name referred to the mountain region where he grew up, but it also had a second meaning. In Mexico, a falcon is sometimes slang for a lookout who watches for police on behalf of the cartels. Whether Fabian chose the name because of that double meaning or not, it fit him. He recorded 36 albums of norteño music over his career. His songs had no filter. He sang openly about drug traffickers, about cocaine and marijuana, about the violence on the Mexico-United States border, about criminal groups, and even about Jesus Malverde, a folk saint that many drug traffickers pray to for protection. Some of his most popular songs were called El Corrido del Coco, which was a song about cocaine smuggling, and Pajarillo, which racked up millions of plays on YouTube. He also recorded love songs and more traditional corridos. But the songs that made him famous were the ones that named names and described the drug trade in detail. What also made Fabian different from most of the other singers on this list was that he was not only a musician, he was also an actor. In the years before his death, he appeared in a regional Mexican film called Alineando Cabritos, performing alongside another singer named Amador Granados, who went by the name El Alacrán, which means the scorpion. The film was low budget and circulated mostly through the same informal markets where Fabian's cassettes and DVDs were sold. But it made him one of the few narco corrido singers who also had a screen career. That detail made his death hit even harder for the communities that knew him on both levels. Fabian's life was already tangled with the cartel world long before his murder. In July of 2009, more than a year before he died, Mexican authorities arrested him during an operation in the port city of Ensenada in Baja California. He was on a yacht. He was with 3 other men. One of those men was identified as an operator for Teodoro Garcia Cimental, a cartel boss known as El Teo. El Teo was a leader in the Tijuana area who was connected to the Sinaloa cartel, and he had earned one of the most horrifying nicknames in the entire Mexican drug war. He was also known as the Stew Maker because he was associated with a man who dissolved the bodies of his victims in acid. When police searched the yacht, they found 1 kilogram of crystal meth, 2 long guns, 3 handguns,
$20,000 in cash, and 844 rounds of ammunition for high-powered rifles. Fabian was eventually released because authorities could not prove he was directly involved in drug trafficking. But after the arrest, he said his life had changed. He told reporters that when he saw soldiers, he felt real fear. He said the whole thing had been a mistake and that there were innocent people everywhere, and that he had been one of them. Whether that was true or not, he went back to performing. He kept recording albums. His final one, titled El R1, went on sale the same day he was killed. On the night of October 19, 2010, Fabian and his two companions were driving along the La Junta-Tutumochi Highway, about 522 kilometers from the United States border. The ambush came on a remote stretch at kilometer 208. The attackers used multiple weapons of different calibers, which meant there were several shooters involved, not just one. They fired and kept firing. All three men in the vehicle were hit repeatedly. There was no chance of escape. When local authorities arrived the next day, they found the bodies, the bullet-riddled vehicle, and the more than 80 shell casings scattered across the ground. Carlos Gonzalez, the spokesman for the Chihuahua State Prosecutor's Office, confirmed the deaths. No motive was officially announced. No arrests were made. The state of Chihuahua in 2010 was one of the most violent regions in Mexico, at the center of a brutal war between the Sinaloa Cartel and the Juarez Cartel. Ciudad Juarez, a few hours north of where Fabian was killed, had the highest murder rate in the world that year. Fabian's previous arrest with a Sinaloa-linked figure, his lyrics that praised certain cartel figures, and the circumstances of his death all pointed to cartel involvement. But as with every other singer on this list, there was never a trial and never any official answer. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Fabian left behind his fans, his unreleased songs, and his one movie role. His music is still streamed millions of times a month on Spotify, but his death stopped being international news within days as Mexico moved on to the next cartel killing. 3 years later, it would be more than one singer at a time. A whole band, 17 musicians and their crew, would disappear from a private party in a single night. Only one of them would walk away alive. Section 7. The Combo, Colombia Massacre. On the night of January 24, 2013, a band called Combo Colombia was hired to play a private party at a bar called La Carreta in the small town of Hidalgo in the state of Nuevo León in northern Mexico. Hidalgo is about 80 miles north of the city of Monterrey and about 40 miles south of the United States border. The bar was a small event space on a ranch. The party that night had around 50 guests. It was a normal gig for the band. They played upbeat Colombian music. People danced. The mood was festive. Around 4 in the morning on January 25th, everything changed. Heavily armed men stormed the bar. They forced every member of the band and their crew, 18 people in total, into trucks. The trucks drove away into the darkness. By the time the sun came up, 17 of those 18 men were dead, their bodies dumped into a deep well on a ranch 30 kilometers away. Only one survived. His escape was the only reason the world ever found out what happened. Combo Colombia was not a cartel band. That is what made their deaths so shocking to the people who knew them. They did not play narco corridos. They did not sing about drug lords. They played a style of music called vallenato, which is a romantic, accordion-based genre that originally comes from Colombia and has become popular in the working-class neighborhoods of Monterrey. Their songs were about love, about heartbreak, about daily life. They had been around for about 3 years and were starting to break through. Teenagers danced with them at live performances. They appeared on regional Mexican TV shows. they had a following. Most of the members were Mexican, and most were from the Monterrey area. Their keyboard player was a Colombian citizen with Mexican residency. What Combo Colombia had done, perhaps without fully understanding the danger, was perform at the wrong bars. In the years before their murder, they had played at several places in downtown Monterrey that were later attacked by gunmen. One of those bars, called Sabino Gordo, had been the site of a massacre in 2011 where the Gulf Cartel killed 21 people. In the fierce turf war between the Gulf Cartel and their former enforcers, Los Zetas, who had broken away and become their rivals, any business that was considered friendly to one side was a target for the other side, and any performer who regularly entertained at those businesses could be seen as an extension of them. On the night of the party at La Carreta, around 4 a.m., a convoy of trucks pulled up outside. Neighbors living near the ranch heard gunshots and then the sound of vehicles speeding away. Armed men, at least 10 of them, walked into the bar in the middle of the band's set. They interrupted the music. They ordered the 18 members of the band and their crew to come with them. The guests at the party were left behind. The band members were loaded into the trucks and driven away into the night. The survivor, whose identity was kept secret by authorities for his own protection, later described what happened. He told police that the men blindfolded all of them. The trucks drove for hours down dirt roads. Eventually, they stopped at a remote ranch called Las Estacas in the municipality of Mina. The band members were pulled out of the trucks in small groups. The armed men beat them. They interrogated them. They asked them if they consumed drugs. They asked if any of them were connected to a cartel. Then they forced the men to their knees. Then they shot them one by one. After each execution, the body was dumped into a deep well on the property. The plan was that the bodies would never be found and the band would simply disappear. The survivor was able to run. The exact details of how he escaped were never made public to protect him, but he made it to a nearby ranch and got help. He led authorities back to the well. What they found there made the story international news. The well was deep, and the bodies were stacked at the bottom. Recovery teams had to work carefully to bring each one up. On the first day, 4 bodies were pulled out. Over the following days, the number rose. 13, 14, 17. Some of the victims were still wearing the matching black band t-shirts they had worn on stage that night. At least one body was too damaged or too deep to recover cleanly. The search for the remaining bodies was eventually called off. Mexican authorities identified the massacre as almost certainly cartel work. Most investigators believed it was Los Zetas, acting on the suspicion that Combo Colombia had performed at venues connected to the rival Gulf Cartel. One theory that circulated in the press was that Los Zetas had deliberately allowed the survivor to escape so that the story would spread widely. If the killers wanted to disappear the band without a trace, they would not have let one man walk out of that well alive. But if they wanted to send a message to every other musician in the region, play our bars or pay the price, then letting one man survive was the way to do it. In February of 2013, authorities arrested a man named Edgar Alberto de la Garza Treviño, an alleged member of Los Zetas, for serving as a lookout during the kidnapping. He was not accused of pulling any triggers. He had also recently escaped from a prison in Apodaca. Police continued searching for 6 other suspects believed to be directly involved in the killings. No mastermind was ever named. No other major convictions ever happened. The Combo Colombia massacre remains officially unsolved. For 12 years, it was the worst single mass murder of musicians in Mexican history. Then, in May of 2025, another band was hired to play a private gig. When they arrived, the venue did not exist. What happened to them next would shock Mexico all over again. Section 8. Ernesto Barajas. On the afternoon of August 19, 2025, A singer named Ernesto Barajas was standing near a car storage lot in Zapopan, a city in the Mexican state of Jalisco. He was with two other people, a man whose identity was not immediately released, and a woman. They were in a neighborhood called Arenales Tapatíos Mariano Otero, right near the intersection of Francisco y Madero Street and Arenales Street. It was an ordinary moment in an ordinary afternoon. Two men on a motorcycle rolled up. They looked at Ernesto, appeared to confirm he was the right person, and then opened fire. Ernesto died at the scene. The man with him died at the scene. The woman was shot in the leg. The motorcycle sped away. Ernesto was 38 years old. He was the lead singer and founder of one of the biggest narco corrido bands in all of Mexico. Ernesto Barajas was born on September 16, 1986, in Culiacán, Sinaloa. Culiacán is the capital of Sinaloa and is also considered the birthplace of modern Mexican drug trafficking. It is the home base of the Sinaloa Cartel. Growing up there, Ernesto would have known the culture of the cartels from the time he was a child. When he was 18 years old, in 2004, he started a band with a friend and guitar player named Humberto Perez. They called the band Enigma Norteño. Their first independent album was called El Jardinero. They made music the way most young musicians do at that age, with no budget and no record deal. But over the next few years, other members joined: accordionist Freddy Hernandez and drummer Jose Baldenegro, and the band signed with a label called Disco Sol. Their 2008 album Infiel made them one of the hottest acts in regional Mexican music. Ernesto did everything in the band. He was the lead vocalist, he played bass, he produced. He directed the group's creative decisions, and the songs he wrote made them famous. He specialized in a type of narco corrido known as movimiento bélico, which roughly translates to the warlike movement. The songs were harder, more violent, and more openly about specific cartel members than the older generation of narco corridos had been. Enigma Norteño wrote tracks named after real figures in the drug trade. One of their biggest hits was called Maíto Gordo, a song about Ismael Zambada Imperial, the son of Sinaloa cartel boss El Mayo Zambada. Another was called El Ondeado. Another was called Chavo Felix. They released songs named after El Chino Antrax, a former top assassin for the Sinaloa cartel. They had a song called Los Chapitos, named after the sons of Joaquin Guzman. Enigma Norteño eventually grew to more than 4 million monthly listeners on Spotify. Their music played on American radio stations. They sold out shows in both countries. In interviews, Ernesto admitted that drug traffickers would sometimes pay him directly to write custom songs about them. He said he would charge around 421,000 Mexican pesos per song, which is about 21,000 US dollars. The songs had to be approved by the people requesting them before they were recorded. That was the business. For the cartels, the songs were a form of advertising and legacy. For Ernesto, they were income. But taking money from one cartel automatically made you an enemy of the others. In 2023, a narcomanta appeared in Baja California. A narcomanta is a banner that cartels hang in public places to send threats and messages. This one was signed by the Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, known as CJNG, one of the most violent criminal groups in the world. The banner was addressed directly to Ernesto. It accused him of being protected by two brothers named Alfonso Arzate Garcia, known as El Aquiles, and René Arzate Garcia, known as La Rana, both operators of the Sinaloa cartel in Tijuana. The message ordered Ernesto not to come to Baja California and not to sing what it called the corridos of his flag. The message ended with a line that said, "Baja has an owner." Signed, CJNG. After the threat, Ernesto canceled a scheduled show at a festival in Rosarito on the advice of local authorities. He stayed quiet in public about the accusations. After that threat, Ernesto moved from Culiacán to Guadalajara. He believed he would be safer there. That move turned out to be a fatal mistake. Guadalajara is the largest city in the state of Jalisco and Jalisco is the heart of CJNG territory. The very cartel that had threatened him controlled the city he chose to hide in. On the afternoon of August 19, 2025, CJNG gunmen found him. The attack happened in broad daylight in a neighborhood of Zapopan, which sits directly next to Guadalajara. Two hitmen on a motorcycle approached him, verified who he was, and shot him and his companion to death in a matter of seconds. The Jalisco State Prosecutor's Office opened an investigation, but no suspects have been detained. Ernesto's management company, Talento Linder, posted a brief tribute on social media, saying, "May God bless him, and that they would always remember him as a great artist and human being." Less than a day before his death, Ernesto had been promoting his newest single, a song called Hello Kitty, a collaboration with another regional Mexican star named Edgardo Núñez. He left behind a wife, Alexis Cias, a son named after him, and a daughter named Alex Emilia. Another tragedy had already struck the band. Their drummer, José Baldenegro, had been kidnapped and killed by an armed group back in 2015. Enigma Norteño had now lost 2 members of their original lineup to cartel violence. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But Ernesto's killing was just one of 3 major cartel executions of famous people in Mexico that happened in the single year of 2025. Just 3 months before he was shot, a 23-year-old beauty influencer was also killed in Zapopan, not far from where he would die. Her murder was broadcast live, on camera, to her own followers on TikTok. Section 9. Valeria Marquez. On the afternoon of May 13, 2025, a 23-year-old influencer named Valeria Marquez was sitting in her own beauty salon in Zapopan, Jalisco, live streaming to her fans on TikTok. Her salon was called Blossom the Beauty Lounge. It was her business. She had opened it in 2024 when she was just 22 years old. She had 113,000 followers on TikTok and around 70,000 on Instagram. On that day, she was chatting with her viewers about ordinary things when she mentioned that a man had come by earlier, claiming to have an expensive gift for her, and had said he wanted to wait until she got there to deliver it in person. She laughed a little, but then she paused on camera. She said something that would later be replayed across the world. She told her followers, maybe they were going to kill me. A few minutes later, that exact thing happened. Valeria's full name was Atziri Valeria Marquez Lopez. She was born in Guadalajara on February 14, 2002. She grew up with a dream of becoming a dentist, and she actually studied dentistry for a while before switching paths. Her life changed in 2018 when, at only 16 years old, she was picked as a model for a Mexican clothing brand called Vicio Vanidad. Modeling led to social media led to brand deals. In 2021, she won the title of Miss Rostro, a local beauty contest in her region. She worked with jewelry and shapewear companies based in Guadalajara. By her early 20s, she had built a successful personal brand around beauty, lifestyle, and entrepreneurship. Opening her own salon was the next step. What her followers did not know, and what investigators would later uncover, was that Valeria was also believed to be romantically involved with a man named Ricardo Ruiz Velasco. Ricardo Ruiz Velasco was not a normal boyfriend. He was a senior commander in the Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, known as CJNG, one of the most powerful criminal organizations on Earth. Whether Valeria fully understood who he was, what he did, or what kind of danger that relationship placed her in, is something we will probably never know. On the afternoon of May 13th, hours before she was killed, a man wearing a mask had arrived at her salon saying he had a gift for her. Valeria was not there yet. A woman working at the salon called her. When Valeria heard about the gift, she became uneasy. She joked about it on her live stream, but she also sounded scared. She told her viewers she did not know what was going on. She asked who would be giving her an expensive present. That was when she said the line about maybe being killed. Not long after, the same masked man returned to the salon. Valeria was now there, still live streaming. He walked in. He handed her a stuffed pink pig and a bag from Starbucks. She lit up for the camera and showed it to her followers. Seconds later, a voice off camera said her name. She answered yes. She muted her live feed for a moment. And then he shot her, in the chest and in the head, in front of her 113,000 followers. She collapsed over her desk with the stuffed animal still beside her. The live stream kept going. Eventually, a person picked up her phone. Their face briefly appeared on screen, and the broadcast was cut. 2 men fled the scene. At first, Mexican authorities opened the case as a femicide, the killing of a woman because she was a woman. But the full truth came out about a month later. On June 18, 2025, the United States Treasury Department announced new sanctions against 5 senior leaders of CJNG. One of the 5 men named was Ricardo Ruiz Velasco. The Treasury's official statement listed him as a suspect in the murder of Valeria Marquez and called her death an example of Mexico's ongoing femicide crisis. The man Valeria had reportedly been romantically involved with was now identified by the United States government as her killer. The leader of CJNG, Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho, was also sanctioned that same day. Her tomb was vandalized not long after her burial. Her TikTok account was taken down. Her family never recovered. Valeria was killed by one of the same cartels that had threatened Ernesto Barajas in the exact same city. But just 8 days after Valeria's death, 5 young musicians in a different Mexican state would be lured to a concert gig that did not exist, only to disappear into the hands of the Gulf Cartel. Section 10. Grupo Fugitivo. On the night of Sunday, May 25, 2025, 5 young Mexican musicians got into a black GMC pickup truck in the border city of Reynosa, Tamaulipas. They called themselves Grupo Fugitivo. They played traditional Mexican corridos at local events, weddings, and private parties around Reynosa. They were not famous. They were not a narco corrido band. They were 5 young men trying to build a career. A few hours before they got into that truck, they had posted a photo on social media from the pedestrian bridge that connects Reynosa with McAllen, Texas. The caption said they hoped to one day expand into the United States and cross borders with their music. That night, they thought they were driving to a private gig in a neighborhood called Riberas del Rio. They never arrived. By the end of the week, all 5 of them would be dead. The 5 members of Grupo Fugitivo were Francisco Javier Vázquez Osorio, who was 20 years old, Victor Manuel Garza Cervantes, who was 21, José Francisco Morales Martínez, who was 23, Nemesio Antonio Duran Rodríguez, who was 40 and the oldest member of the group, and their manager, Livan Ediberto Solís de la Rosa, who was 27. A 6th member, lead vocalist Carlos Gonzalez, was also supposed to travel with them that night, but he was running late and missed the ride. That small accident of timing saved his life. Everyone else in the truck disappeared. The concert they were heading to was not real. They had been hired for what they believed was a private event, but the location turned out to be a setup. Somewhere between their homes and the neighborhood where they thought they were going, at around 10 p.m., they were intercepted by armed men. Their families heard nothing from them after that. The band had a small following with around 5,000 fans on Facebook. By Monday morning, friends and family began posting online, begging for information. Relatives reported the disappearance to a special missing persons unit in Reynosa. By Tuesday, the families started receiving ransom calls from the kidnappers, demanding money for the musicians to be returned alive. The response from the community was immediate. On Wednesday, May 28th, protesters marched in Reynosa and blocked the international bridge that connects Reynosa to Far, Texas, They held signs with the faces of the 5 missing young men. They gathered outside the local prosecutor's office to demand action. Later that same day, the protesters went to a nearby cathedral to pray and light candles. Mexican authorities began working faster.
That same Tuesday, they had located the band's black GMC pickup truck, abandoned in a different neighborhood called La Cañada, with the Grupo Fugitivo logos removed from the side. Using video surveillance footage from security cameras and by tracking the musicians' cell phones, investigators pieced together a route that led them to a property in a neighborhood called Aquiles Cerdán, on the eastern edge of Reynosa, near the banks of the Rio Grande River. On Thursday, May 29th, the search ended. Mexican authorities confirmed that they had found the bodies of all 5 members of Grupo Fugitivo. Their remains were discovered on the outskirts of Reynosa. According to local media reports, the bodies had been burned. Mexican officials did not deny those reports. The Tamaulipas Attorney General, Ervin Barrios, held a press conference and confirmed that the investigation pointed to a cell of the Gulf Cartel known as Los Metros, which has its main operations in Reynosa. Los Metros had been involved in many violent incidents in the city over the years. 9 people were arrested that same week in connection with the kidnapping and murders. The following Monday, on June 2nd, authorities carried out another operation and arrested 3 more people, bringing the total to 12. Weapons, ammunition, cocaine, and methamphetamines were seized during the raids. Among those arrested was a man the Mexican Secretary of Security identified as the mastermind behind the killings. He was a Gulf Cartel leader known by the alias M47, also called Jimmy. The other 2 suspects arrested with him were only publicly identified as Raul N. and Jesus Alejandro N. Authorities never publicly stated exactly why Grupo Fugitivo was killed. The band did not sing narco corridos. They did not appear to have any public connections to organized crime. The prevailing theory was that they had been lured into a trap using the fake concert as bait, possibly because someone in the cartel believed they were linked to a rival faction, or simply because they were easy targets for kidnapping and ransom. The motive has still not been officially confirmed. From Chalino Sanchez in 1992 to Grupo Fugitivo in 2025, the pattern has never changed. Famous entertainers who lived too close to the cartels, who sang about them, or who were simply unlucky enough to be in the wrong city on the wrong night, paid the ultimate price. Their deaths span more than 3 decades, but every one of them was silenced for the same reason, by men who still walk free in Mexico today. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.